This is where real conversations happen. Welcome to Sit Down Sundays on the Final Boss podcast, where the movers, the creators, the ones really making things shake, pull up, sit down and talk different. No filters, no fluff, just raw stories, real journeys, and the mindset behind success. From influencers to entrepreneurs to visionaries turning ideas into empires, we tap in with the people who don't just talk about it, they live it. This ain't just an interview, this is a seat at the table. So lock in, listen close, and learn how bosses move. Sit Down Sundays, only on the Final Boss podcast. New era, same boss.
Welcome to the Final Boss Podcast. Sitting Down Sundays, episode number 250, man. Episode number 250. We are here, man. We are here. Listen, I got a great show for you tonight, man. OMG, we are episode 250. OMG. I can't believe it, man. I can't believe it. Ooh, man, what a journey. On our way to episode 300, but we get into that later on, right? So, if you're just now joining us, thank you for being here, right? If it's your first time joining us, thank you for being here. You are where you're supposed to be. And for all of those out there who are with, hey, I see you guys. I see you, Andre. I see you, Chakande. I see you, Steve. I see you, Eric. I see you, Daryl. I see times 311. I see all of you guys as you're starting to come in. I see Tasha. I see Aubrey. Hey, Aubrey, what's up, big cuz? I see everyone that is starting to come in, man. Too many names to drop, but those are just some of the first few, right? They kind of like beat me here, right? So, listen, tonight's episode, right? Episode 250, right? Season 4, Arc 4, right? Season 4, the rebirth, Arc 4, the construction. Episode 250. On our way to the harvest, episode 300, man. Look, let's begin with the greetings of the day, man. The greeting of the day is good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And as always, this is for entertainment purposes only, man. Entertainment purposes only, man. This is Sitting Down Sundays. And let me adjust my throne, right? Let me adjust my throne. All right, throne is adjusted. Let me go ahead and get rid of the banners now. Boom, banners are out of here. Right. So, man, few admin notes. Look, if you haven't got Go Time All Aboard the Fired Up Train, go get it. Go Time All Aboard the Fired Up Train right now. Amazon bestseller. Go pick it up. Right. We're going to drop the link later on for the book site. And I got some commercials that I'm doing also that I'm going to be shooting out there. So stay tuned and pay attention and look out for those. They are coming, right? You want to keep those emails coming. Keep your emails and questions coming. Send them to info@thefinalbosspodcast.com. You never know when we're going to do another town hall. So keep those coming. We greatly appreciate you guys, man. I love doing town halls, man. Town halls are becoming a thing, right? So info@thefinalbosspodcast.com. And if you need to go back and check all of our past or previous episodes, right? Redundancy, right? Go to the website at www.thefinalbosspodcast.com. That's www.thefinalbosspodcast.com. Now, I think that's everything. I think that is everything, right? Yeah. Anything else? We'll talk about it within the episode. So, look, you've been celebrating things that are not finished yet. right? I'm calling you out, right? And this isn't an observation. This is a diagnosis, right? Look, we're at episode 250. 250 episodes of the Final Boss podcast. And tonight we're not throwing a party. Nope, not throwing a party. No reason to celebrate, right? We're throwing a question instead, right? And that question is at you that most people spend their entire lives running from. What does a builder do when the numbers get impressive, but the work is not done, right? When the work isn't done. Most people, right? We talk about this. Most people slow down. The brain senses the finish line and starts releasing the reward before the race is over. Science actually has a name for that, right? It's like we're naming it too, right here in this chair, right? And then we're going to burn it down in true sitting down Sunday fashion, right? Because the harvest is 50 episodes out, right? That's roughly 10 weeks. 5 weeks, five episodes a week. That's roughly around 10 weeks, right? And then season 5 is coming. And everything you're building right now either survives the season, changes it, or it doesn't, right? There is no middle ground in a harvest. You either built something worth reaping or you built something that looks good in photography in photographs, right? Now, tonight, on Sitting Down Sundays with the Final Boss, I am the Final Boss, right? Episode 250, as I stated before, right? We're going to deliver one verdict. And that verdict changes how you think about every milestone you will ever hit again. I guarantee you, right? Because architecture does not celebrate. It just holds. It just holds, right? And you have to ask yourself, are you holding, right? Are you holding? Now, tonight, let's do it. I threw some intellectual stuff into this episode. I want to talk about the episode thesis, right? Because it's important to know what the mindset is, right? And then we're going to look at the lens of tonight's episode before we get into the brass tacks, right? We're going to do all that before we get into the brass tacks. So tonight's thesis is this. Think about this, right? Think about milestones do not stop construction. They confirm it. Episode 250 is not a finish line. It's a foundation report. The builder who pauses to celebrate in the middle of the build is the builder who loses the structure to the season of change, right? The harvest is 50 episodes out. The construction is active. The work does not wait for an applause, but we're going to give ourselves an applause anyway, because that's what we do, right? Then, from the rebirth lens, because you need to understand what the lens is about. And rebirth is not a comfort, right? It's a demand. And every arc of season 4 has stripped something insufficient and hardened something necessary. The builder who emerges from the rebirth does not celebrate milestones. The builder uses them as calibration points, as proof of load capacity, as data for what the structure can hold moving forward, right? The rebirth is operating at full compression. The old self would have thrown a party. The reborn sovereign takes inventory and keeps on building, right? Now, let's move into the brass tacks of the evening. Let's move into the brass tacks, right? Brass tacks is coming from yours truly, the one, the only, the Final Boss, right? So, think about this. I know I love to give you guys things to think about, right? But here's something for you, right? Brass tacks. The structure does not celebrate. It does not mourn. It does not doubt. It simply holds, right? It simply holds. And the builder who learns to think like their building has discovered the most dangerous competitive advantage available to a sovereign mind, right? That's the brass tacks. That's coming from yours truly, right? So, like bombs, right? Right? Like bombs, man, dropping bombs of information. Now, look, we're in the construction. You got to understand the metaphors, right? You cannot build 250 floors of a building and stop to look down. That is not what builders do. That is what tourists do, right? Tourists show up after the structure is complete. They take their photographs, they buy the souvenir, and then they leave. Builders do not have that option. Builders are still inside the walls, still making decisions that nobody outside the building can see yet, right? Still pouring the next floor while the one below is still occurring, right? And tonight, we are not tourists. No, we aren't. Final bosses, smarts, motivators, warriors, we are not tourists. Tonight, we're sitting inside of the structure that took 250 episodes to erect. And we're not here to admire the view from the outside. We are here to talk about what it actually means to be a builder in the middle of a build, right? What it means to be someone who does not stop when the numbers get impressive. What it means to keep your hands on the work instead of reaching for your phone to take a photo of how far you've come. Welcome. For those who are just joining us, I see you coming in. Welcome to Sitting Down Sundays with the Final Boss. I am the Final Boss. This is season 4, Art for the Construction, episode number 250. Now, let me tell you exactly what tonight is not. Not, right? Tonight is not a celebration episode, right? We did that at episode 200. And I know what you're thinking right now. 250 is a milestone. It may be a milestone. 250 is a number that deserves recognition. It really does deserve recognition, right? 250 deserves a party. I love to party. Yeah, I wish I could do a party right now, right? And I hear all of you complete. Yes, Steve, 250 is a party. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. Look, man, I know, right? Listen, I hear that completely, man. I hear that completely. I appreciate you, right? The feeling is real and it is legitimate. But the title of tonight's conversation is Architecture Does It Celebrate? That's tonight's title of tonight's show. And that title is not a preference of a style choice. It's a philosophy. It's a doctrine. It is a position that the entire episode is built to defend and explain and make permanently useful to every builder in the community. So smarts, motivators, warriors, final bosses, get your notes. Listen up, right? Because here's what I know about buildings and what buildings know about us, right? The Pantheon did not stop construction to throw a party when they laid the 250 stone. The Brooklyn Bridge did not pause for applause at the halfway point over the East River. Those structures just held, right? We are the building that's under construction, right? They just kept becoming what they were designed to be, regardless of what the calendar said about the progress. That is the intellectual conversation we're having tonight, right? So, if you don't know, SDS is the show where we slow down enough to actually think, where we trade noise for depth, where we choose clarity over clout, where the smarts, final bosses, motivators, warriors, and all 4 pillars of the community, to include the nation, the family, right? To include the final boss nation, final boss family, final boss community, right? Where we all pull up a chair and we examine what we're doing and why we're doing it at the foundational level, right? Not for content, not for metrics, for consciousness, for the kind of real structural clarity that only comes when you sit down long enough to hear yourself think without the noise of the week drowning out the signal that actually matters, right? And then, because it is rebirth, right? The rebirth that powers season 4, it's not a comfortable transformation. It would never was, and it never was designed to be, right? It's a demanding process. It strips away every performance of progress and demands actual verifiable progress in its place, not pageantry, right? No pause for applause, right? I should coin that. No pause for applause. Yeah. You know what? I be coming up with some stuff, man. Let me tell you. No pause for applause. Oh, man, I love it. No pause for applause. I might have to use that on YouTube. No pause for applause. Man, that's fire. I be coming up with these one-liners sometimes, man. So, just the next floor, right? Just the next segment, just the next episode of the schedule where whether the previous one felt like it was enough or not, right? Whether it was 250 or not, we're still going, we're still counting, because architecture does not celebrate. But tonight we're doing it. We're going to understand exactly what that position represents in the highest form of sovereign intelligence available to a builder operating at this level of ambition and commitment. I need you to pull up, right? Pull up, get comfortable, and we're going deep tonight, right? And we're not coming back up until we have built something worth keeping from this very conversation, right? So here's the question that nobody asks architects, but everybody who is building something significant should be asking themselves regularly, right? And it's this: when the building is halfway done, does it know it? Nope. It don't, right? Does the structure have an awareness at all that it's becoming something significant, right? Something that outlasts the hands that built it. Something that people will reference and inhabit and depend on long after the construction phase is complete. The obvious answer is no, right? No. And look, still don't think. Concrete does not feel the weight of its own ambition. Rebar does not carry a vision forward through the pour. But here's precisely where the analog breaks open into something worth sitting with for minutes and hours, right? Days to nights, right? Because tonight the analogy is doing important work for us. You, my friend, are not steel. You aren't concrete, right? You are a conscious sovereign being in the middle of constructing your life and legacy and your empire simultaneously across multiple fronts. And unlike the building, you do know, right? You are fully aware. You feel every floor as it goes in. You remember every foundation decision you made when the ground was still soft and the outcome was still uncertain. You carry the accumulated weight of every arc in the memory and your body and your daily choices, right? The awareness is simultaneously your greatest strategic asset and your most dangerous psychological liability if you don't manage it with discipline, right? Because a lot of y'all like discipline, right? You do. The first thing of awareness is admitting, accepting, being responsible for it, right? And not doing that is dangerous. Why dangerous? Because awareness without active discipline becomes nostalgia almost immediately, right? And nostalgia in the middle of an active construction phase is the single most expensive luxury a builder can allow themselves to indulge, right? When you start looking backward at what you built instead of looking forward at what remains to be built, the work slows. The quality of decisions degrades because you're being made by someone who is mentally somewhere other than where the work actually is, right? You know what that's like? That's like being in school, and I don't know if they still do this or not, but back in the day, we used to get progress reports, right? Progress reports either came a quarter or halfway through the period. And the progress reports will say that, oh man, you got straight A's, right? And you live in those moments on the progress report, knowing that you have an entire half semester to continue. But because you live in the past and you relish in the thinking of the progress report is what I am right now, when it's not. It's the halfway point. And you cease to do what got you to the progress report. You get where I'm going? And at the end, you have failing grades because you couldn't get past the progress report. You need to understand that the momentum bends in the wrong direction when you do that. The arc curves away from its intended destination. And like us and where we are with 50 episodes from season 5, The Harvest, it is not the moment right now, right, to allow any bending whatsoever, right? This is the moment to press forward with everything available, with everything we have. This is arc 4, the construction, and it's in full activation. The rebirth is not behind us in the rearview mirror. It is the engine running underneath everything happening in the episodes right now in this season, right? And so the intellectual table tonight is set around one central and precise question. What does it actually mean to be a builder in the middle of a build? Not at the beginning when the vision is fresh and the energy is electric and everyone around you is excited about what you're going to become and the possibilities of feeling genuinely infinite, right? Not at the end when the ribbon gets cut and the cameras show up and the celebration legitimate and is earned because the work is verifiably complete. We're in the middle. When the scaffolding is still visible, when the work is active but unfinished, when the structure is low-bearing but not yet livable or shareable or fully demonstratable to anyone outside the construction zone, right? That middle space, that is precisely where character is actually formed in ways the beginning and the ending never produce, right? Never produce. And for my smarts tonight, this is a systems conversation about momentum maintenance during phase transitions when output is invisible. And for my final bosses, this is the legacy conversation about the quality of decisions you make when nobody is watching the build, right? Closely enough to grade your work. And for my motivators, it is the endurance conversation about why the internal drive does not get to the milestone day off when the arc is still active and the structure needs attention, right? And for my warriors, it is a mission conversation about holding a position that feels like it should already be secured, but is not yet. All 4 pillars are exactly where you need to be tonight for this conversation. And we're going to go deep, right? We're going to go deep. So let's go to the record and get the record straight. Because the record does not lie and it does not offer comfort when the truth is uncomfortable. Let us look at what history actually shows us about builders who were deep in the middle of something significant and kept moving forward without waiting for permission from anyone outside the build, without requiring validation from people who did not understand the blueprints, and without needing applause from the audiences, right? Who could not yet see what the structure was becoming. Because this is not a new conversation. It's not a new conversation happening for the first time tonight on this particular show, right? Human beings have been constructing ambitious things since the beginning of time, since before language had words for the act of construction itself. And the pattern across every civilization in every century in every category of human achievement that history has preserved for us to study is always the same pattern without exception. The ones who finish the build are not the most naturally talented people who started it. They are not the most well-resourced at the beginning. They are not the ones who received the most encouragement during the active construction phase. They're the ones who made a singular cognitive decision that stopping was simply not an option available to them, regardless of how difficult the bill became or how long it ran. That decision made once, and then they lived in it every day without renegotiation. It is what separates the moments that stand still, from the ruins that only historians remember, right? Now, consider Antoni Gaudi, right? And the Sangradi familia in Barcelona as the clearest historical example of what I'm describing tonight, because Gaudi began construction on the cathedral in 1882. He died in 1926, having never seen the structure anywhere near completion. Sangradi familia is still under active construction today, meaning the single architectural project has been continuous development for 140 years across multiple lead architects, multiple generations of builders, craftsmen, people, multiple centuries of human effort and resource commitment. And here's the specific detail that he would not live to see. He won't live to see it finished. He designed the entire project with that knowledge fully present and fully accepted in his mind before the first stone was laid under his direction. He built it anyway. He built it with more structural complexity and more architectural ambition and more intricate detail than any building that any single human being could ever hope to see completed within one natural lifetime. And why did he make that choice? Because he was not building it for the ribbon cutting. He was not building it for the moment of personal completion and recognition that most builders quietly dream about. He was building for the permanence of the structure itself, for what the Sagrada Familia would mean to the world when it was finally done, regardless of whether he was alive to receive any credit for it. That, my friends, is the intellectual and spiritual position of true sovereign builder. And it is in this position this community is being called to inhabit tonight on this episode. You build past yourself. You build past the milestone and the impressive number. You build past the download counts and the social engagement metrics and the applause of people who do not understand the blueprints you are working from. You build because the structure itself demands to exist. Because the idea has genuine gravitational pull that does not release you until the work reaches completion. The smarts understand this from a systems design. The final bosses understand it from a legacy architecture. The motivators understand it from a discipline of sustained forward drive across seasons. The warriors understand it from mission execution that continues regardless of recognition or external reward or anyone watching from the outside, right? Listen, all four pillars already know what God he knew. You carry that understanding. You just need to hear it precisely at the moment when the milestone is making the most noise around you and the internal voice is making the most rational sounding case for slowing down or stopping here, right? You cannot slow down here. This isn't a stopping point. The harvest is 50 episodes out. The building does not celebrate. It just keeps becoming what it was always designed to be. And what this particular structure is becoming is worth every segment of every episode between right now and episode 300. Right? So here's where the conversation gets philosophically interesting in ways that are also practically dangerous if you're not paying a close and deliberate attention to what was happening inside your own mind when milestones arrive. Because a milestone is simultaneously two things that are in direct tension of one another, right? It is the marker of genuine progress, and it is the potential interruption of the momentum that produced that said progress, right? Now think carefully about what that dual nature actually means for a builder in an active construction phase. The very thing designed to show you how far you have come can, right? Sit with it. And if you're not conscious and intentional about how you respond to it, you need to convince yourself to slow down at precisely the moment when acceleration is what the structural situation demands from you. This is not a motivational observation that I'm offering for general inspiration. This is a specific and documented cognitive phenomenon wearing construction clothes tonight for the audience, and it matters enormously right now in the middle of the construction. 50 episodes out to the harvest, right? Now, researchers and behavioral psychology have documented what they call the goal proximity effect. Write that down, right? Which describes what happens inside human cognition when people can see the finish line of a significant goal clearly and feel confident they are going to reach it. When the clarity arrives, something counterintuitive happens inside the brain of a significant portion of goal pursuing humans. Because some people do accelerate toward the finish as you might expect, right? But a meaningful percentage of people actually begin to slow down without consciously choosing to slow down or even being fully aware that it's happening. The brain senses that completion is approaching and that the reward is nearly guaranteed, right? And what happens is it begins to pre-release a neurochemical reward chemistry associated with achievement. You start to experience this satisfaction before the work is actually finished and verified. And that premature satisfaction creates the exact conditions of a slowdown in effort and quality of work. And it happens in the worst possible time because the work is not done and the season has not changed yet. Harvest does not arrive on a schedule adjusted for how good you feel about the progress, right? And that's precisely why architecture doesn't celebrate is simply a creative and memorable title for an episode about hitting a milestone number. It is a cognitive correction being delivered at the exact moment when the correction is the most thing that's needed and the most thing that's likely to be resisted because the feelings that you feel right now that are pulling you in the other direction are strong and they feel legitimate because buildings do not experience goal proximity effect. They do not have the neurological architecture to pre-celebrate their own structural completion. They either hold the load being placed on them or they fail structurally, right? There is no comfortable in between state where the beginning pauses to appreciate how much of itself already exists before agreeing to support the next floor or the next build. The fixers of load and structure do not negotiate with feelings about progress. And the sovereign mind operating at the level this community has committed to operating at should not negotiate with those feelings either, right? Should negotiate. Now, let's get personal. Right? Let's get personal for a minute, right? Do I want to get personal? Nah. We're not getting personal. I don't want to get personal. Nope. Nah. Let's keep building. Let's keep building in the construction. Because we'll save the personal stuff for another night. We only got 24 minutes left. So we do the personal stuff later, right? So let's get back to the construction. Because in construction, right, there are two fundamental categories of components, and every builder who is serious about what they're building needs to understand, and that is the difference between them before they pick up a single tool or commit a single resource to build. The first category is load bearing. Talked about load bearing. Load bearing elements are the components that hold the structure up and distribute the weight of everything above them down to the foundation. You remove a load bearing element from a standing structure and the building collapses, regardless of how beautiful the decorative work looks. And the decorative work around the element and whatever it happens to be. The secondary category is decorative. Decorative elements make the building worth inhabiting, worth experiencing, worth spending time inside, worth returning to, worth recommending to someone else. You remove the decorative elements from a structurally sound building and it still stands without compromise. But it has no soul and no invitation and no compelling reason for anyone to choose to be inside it over any other available space. Both categories serve the structure. Both matter to the completed building. But the sequence in which you build is not a matter of personal preference or creative choice. You build a load bearing first and always, right? Without exception, under any circumstances. The arch goes in before the chandelier. The foundation goes in before the floor tile selection is even discussed. The structural wall goes in before anyone raises the question of paint color, right? Sequence in construction is not a stylistic consideration. It is physics, ladies and gentlemen. It is the non-negotiable logic of how load works in three-dimensional space over time. Now, apply that framework with complete honesty to your life and what you're actively building right now, right? What in your current construction is genuinely load bearing and what is genuinely decorative, right? And I want you to sit with that question for a real moment and resist the instinct to answer it quickly, because the quick answer is almost always wrong. It takes discipline to correctly categorize your own work, because the decorative elements generate immediate visible feedback in the form of likes and comments and shares and recognition, which makes them feel more important in the moment that the load-bearing decisions that generate no immediate feedback at all, but determine whether the structure stands or falls over the long arc or the build. Listen, for me, the podcast is load-bearing. The white papers are load bearing. The doctoral research framework is load bearing, the discipline of showing up every single week without exception for 250 consecutive episodes, regardless of what else is happening in my life and my business and my world, is load bearing to everything the structure is designed to eventually become, right? The social media graphics, the platform aesthetics, the brand visual identity, those are decorative. Both are necessary and important and worth doing. It need to be done well. But decorative, at the moment, I began consistently prioritizing decorative work over low-bearing work in my daily decisions. The structure weakens from the inside in ways that are invisible from the outside until the damage is already significant and expensive to repair, right? And this is one of the most pervasive and quality destructive patterns sovereign builders fall into in the middle of ambitious active construction phases. They fall deeply in love with the decorative work because the decoration generates the immediate visible social feedback that low-bearing work never produces on the same timeline or with the same emotional reward. Nobody posts about rebar. They don't. Nobody goes viral because they pound a structurally perfect foundation. Doesn't happen. Nobody generates significant engagement from a load-bearing decision that would not be visible from the outside for another 6 months of continuous effort. Doesn't happen. But rebar and foundation pours and invisible structural choices made in the dark are exactly what makes a 50-story building possible and what makes the harvest productive and scalable when season 5 arrives at episode 300, right? Smarts, I need you to lock in, right? Smarts, I need you to lock in, right? Because smarts, you understand this dynamic from systems architecture and infrastructure design, and where the invisible backend is always more critical to system performance than the visible user interface that everyone interacts with and judges. The warriors understand it from a combat operational planning where every visible action in the field is downstream of visible preparation and logistics work that nobody photographs or celebrates. Tonight, we run a diagnostics with full honesty, right? With full honesty. Even if only to yourself. You name the decorative elements with the same clarity. Then you verify that your daily resource allocation is sequenced correctly because the harvest reward structure that were built correctly from the ground up. Not structures that generated impressive visible output while the low-bearing foundation was being quietly neglected, right? Now, I want to ask the community something, right? I want to ask you guys, right? Get your pen, get your paper. I want to ask you guys a question. And this question is important at this time frame in season 4, arc 4, as we are in the middle of the season at episode 250. I want to ask you, what are you building right now? Right? What are you building right now? Right? Because everything about tonight carries midpoint energy, right? And that is not an accident. And it's not by accident of scheduling. Because midpoints deserve a specific and deliberate kind of attention that neither beginnings nor endings ever receive in the way they deserve. The beginning of anything gets the energy from novelty and possibility and the electric feeling of a fresh start. It's the same feeling of when you get excited about starting a new business or something, right? The ending gets the energy from completion and relief and the legitimate satisfaction of finishing what you started. That's how I felt when I graduated last week with my master's. But the midpoint gets nothing automatically. It has to be chosen deliberately. It has to be examined consciously because the midpoint is where the real information about the build actually lives. It is where you find out whether the structure you designed with confidence at the beginning is actually holding the load you placed on it during the active construction phase, right? It is where the gap between your original vision and your current execution becomes the undeniable and measurable and becomes measurable, right? If that gap exists, right? The midpoint does not flatter and it does not forgive. It just shows you the truth about what you're actually building versus what you told yourself you were building when the energy was high and the obstacles were theoretical. So I want to turn the lens directly to the community for this conversation right here, right? For this conversation right here. The conversation I want to have right now is not mostly a practical, but it's honest, and it's an honest conversation of the entire night, right? And it's not theoretical, it's not philosophical, it's operational. What are you actually building right now at this specific moment in your life? Not what you intend to build at some comfortable and undefined future point when the conditions feel more favorable. Not what you successfully completed 3 years ago that you're still living inside mentally and emotionally and calling it your current build when it actually is your current history. Because I'm talking about right now, right motherfucking now, right? What are you building, right? Are you just sitting around watching TV? Are you just playing video games? Are you just taking in what the world gives you, right? Or are you building? What are you building right now? Because tonight, I need to know. Drop it in the chat, man. Drop it in the chat right now. What are you building, right? Smarts, motivators, warriors, final bosses. What are you guys building? Drop it in the chat. Drop some emojis right now. Let me know if this conversation is resonating with you. Man, I need that feedback, man. Give me the feedback, right? Because we're in a specific season of your life. With these specific resources and constraints and obligations, what is genuinely under active construction and how is the structure actually holding up under the load you have placed on it? What are your plans? Do you have a blueprint? Are you writing things down, right? I would love to show you guys my whiteboard, but it has classified information on it, right? And here's what I observe consistently and without exception in communities that are built around sovereignty and ambition and the intentional legacy construction. People are extraordinarily good at identifying what they want to build, right? Yeah, vision generation is almost never constrained. Inspiration is not the resource that runs short. Clarity about the destination you are aiming for is rarely where the real breakdown in the build happens. The breakdown happens in the middle of the construction phase. And it's the equivalent of your own breakdown of your own personal arc, right? We're going to call it your own personal arc 4. And on a specific day, 247 of the 365 days of commitment when the beginning energy has fully dissipated and can no longer be accessed as a motivational resource. And the finish line is nowhere in sight. It's not close enough to generate its own gravitational pull toward it. We're talking about that day, right? That specific moment of invisible mid-construction pressure where the work has to continue on nothing but discipline and identity and the commitment you made to yourself before the difficulty of the build was fully visible. That is where builders are permanently and definitively separated from people who were genuinely inspired to start something but were not built at the identity level to finish it, right? And for my smarts, what system are you currently in mid-design of, right? In mid-design on what is yet producing visible external outputs, but is absolutely load-bearing to everything that needs to come after it in your own architecture, right? Name it, hold it. The same commitment we're talking about is the same commitment you would give to something already producing results. Fighter bosses identified a specific legacy structure you are actively building right now, and that will still be standing, operating, and producing value 20 years from tonight, when you're not physically in the room to maintain it. For my motivators who are in your immediate circle, are you actively keeping in forward motion right now? Even in the days when you personally need someone to apply the same force to your own momentum. And for my warriors, what position are you holding tonight that no one outside of your immediate operation is watching, but that everything in your downstream is dependent on the build? And it depends on you not abandoning it. All 4 pillars are actively in the build. Name yours out loud tonight. Drop it in the chat, even if only, or tell somebody, tell your accountability person, right? If only one person hears it, you name it, right? Even if the only person who hears it, you name it, right? You name it, right? Now, I wanted to celebrate this episode, right? I wanted to celebrate it. But then something deep inside me said, no. I wanted to extend my celebration after 24 hours of graduating. But something inside me said, no, you get 24 hours, right? And when you're building, the master's was only part of the build. I'm only a third of the way of what I'm trying to build. One third of the way, right? And we're talking about construction. Construction is the metaphor, right? Because no construction project in documented history of human civilization has ever proceeded from inception to completion without encountering sustained opposition of multiple types simultaneously. Not a single one. There's always weather that arrives at the worst possible moment in the construction schedule and disrupts the timeline in ways the original plan did not account for it, right? There's always material failure that reveals itself only after significant resources have been invested in the assumption that the material would perform as specified, right? There's always a contractor or partner or collaborator who commits fully at the beginning and does not show up at the most critical day of the pour when their specific contribution is low-bearing and not substantiable. And it's on short notice. There is always the inspector who finds a problem in the foundation work that requires going back and doing work that you believed was already completed and verified. There's always the regulatory body that needs another form submitted and the adjacent project that files an objection, and the market conditions that shift in the wrong direction while you are in mid-build and fully exposed with resources committed. And then there's no easy exit, right? Construction, by its fundamental nature, attracts resistance from multiple directions simultaneously. Because anything that is genuinely worth building disrupts the existing landscape in ways that the existing landscape does not welcome or accommodate gracefully or without reaction. The existing landscape has its own interest in remaining exactly as it currently is. Your build is a direct challenge to the interests. You need to expect that level of response, right? And for the sovereign builder operating at the level of ambition that this community has committed to, opposition arrives in two fundamentally different forms, and you have to recognize which forms you're going to be dealing with in any given moment because they require completely visible and identifiable, ultimately manageable and sufficiently strategic resources, intelligence, and operational flexibility. The market shifts and you adjust your positioning and resource allocation. The budget contracts and the budget contracts, and you identify what is low bearing and protected while temporarily releasing what is decorative. The platform changes its algorithm, and you adapt your distribution strategy without abandoning the content quality that is the actual load bearing asset. The partner exists, and you identify who fills the specific functional gap in the middle of the build, and you recruit accordingly. These are real and genuinely challenging disruptions to any active construction project, but they are navigationable, right? Because you can see them clearly and name them specifically and respond to them with concrete, strategic, and operational adjustments. Internal opposition is a categorically more dangerous form. The internal voice that arrives at episode 250 and says, with complete apparent reasonableness, that 250 is genuinely enough, that you have already proven everything that you needed to prove to yourself and to the people who were watching the build, that the structure is already impressive enough that stopping here and calling it a completed phase would be a defensible and even admirable decision. The voice does not sound like fear. It sounds like accumulated wisdom. It does not feel like weakness. It feels exactly like earned self-awareness and mature perspective. The sophisticated, I couldn't get that out. I couldn't say sophisticated. Oh my God. Oh, man, when I talk a lot, man, I'm gonna make sure that when I'm doing these conferences that I have water or something to drink on standby, right? Back to sophisticated disguise. The sophisticated disguise is what makes it the most dangerous opposition in any ambitious build, right? And to my warriors in the community, I want you to hear this specific piece in a way that goes beyond intellectual understanding and to body level recognition. You have experienced this dynamic in environments where the stakes of misreading it were not professional but physical. The most dangerous moment in any serious engagement is not when the opposition is loudest and most visible and most active. It is when it goes quiet without a clear reason for the quiet. The silence is not safety or resolution or the departure of the threat. The silence is that the opposition is repositioning itself for a more precise and damaging approach at the moment of your next vulnerability. It is your own accumulated limitations repositioning themselves for the more sophisticated attack on your forward momentum at the precise moment when you are statistically most vulnerable to accepting the argument for stopping, which is always immediately following a genuine achievement that created legitimate grounds for being satisfied, right? Look, do not negotiate with that voice. Do not argue with it or try to defeat it or debate it because it is susceptible to logical arrangement, logical argument when the emotional conditions favor its position. Acknowledge what it is telling you about where your current edges and limitations are. Use the information as construction data about what needs to be built next in your capacity, right? What your next peak is, what your next objective is, right? And then you keep building because the structure is not finished. The harvest is at 50 episodes out on this arc, and you do not stop at episode 50, right? We got 50 episodes to go from the harvest. 250 sounds like a number that should feel like it's enough, but it's not, right? Now, whew, man, I am hot. We're going to go over, right? We're going to go over. Give me 2 minutes, right? Let's talk about the brass tacks. And we're going to dive deep tonight on the brass tacks because it is episode 250, right? And tonight's brass tacks came about, and it said, and it was not intellectually complicated, right? It didn't require advanced frameworks. It didn't require any of the doctoral citations to access and understand. It didn't need a language block. But it did require something that is actually harder than intellectual complexity. It required you to sit completely still for about 4 minutes. And what I'm about to say, it needed to land in that part of you that makes real decisions about your build, not the part that processes information for later reference, but never changes the actual behavior. So stay with me right now. Stay with me. Stay with me. Don't go anywhere, right? I know it's an hour up. We got some more time, right? Because this matters, right? It matters at the halfway point. Because the hardest thing about building something genuinely significant is not the physical or the cognitive labor that build requires. The labor is demanding, but it's clean because it's visible and it generates the feeling of forward progress that sustains the builder through the difficulty of the work itself. The hardest thing is not the financial cost of the construction, the materials, or the infrastructure, and the people and the platform that have access to the build requires. The cost is real and it creates genuine constraint, but it is also navigationable with sufficient creativity and strategic resourcefulness. The hardest thing is not even the opposition we examined early on. The external disruptions and internal voices that attempt to stop the build at every milestone that creates a plausible stopping point. Opposition is difficult, but it is identifiable. And once identified, it can be strategically managed. The hardest thing about building something genuinely significant is the sustained and total invisibility of real progress during the active mid-construction phase, when the most important and most low-bearing work of the entire project is actually happening. When you are inside the walls of a structure under active construction, you cannot see the outside of the building from where you are working. You cannot see the shape that is emerging from all of your decisions and all of your effort and all of the sustained commitment to that particular build. You know the work is happening because you're doing it. You're doing the work. You can feel the structure growing and hardening beneath your hands. But from the inside of the building that is genuinely under construction, it does not look like anything recognizable or complete or impressive yet. It looks like raw material and organized intentional effort into hundreds of individual decisions that will make it complete in obvious sense and retrospect, but it feels incomplete and sometimes even arbitrary in the moment they are making or being made with imperfect information and sufficient external feedback, right? Now consider specifically what sustained visibility demands from you at the level of cognitive commitment and character. It demands that you believe in the outcome before the outcome is demonstrable to a single person outside the construction zone who you could point to as an external proof that the build is real and it's working, right? It demands that you make quality decisions under conditions of low visibility and high uncertainty, knowing that those decisions will be permanently embedded in the structure and visible to everyone and everything, including you, right? It demands that you resist the very human and very understandable pressure to tear out the walls of your build mill construction just to show people what is happening inside and generate the proof of activity that feels necessary to justify the continued investment of your time and your resources and your identity. The builder who tears out structural walls permanently to generate external visibility compromise the load-bearing integrity of the entire build for the sake of temporary social proof. The walls exist to hold the load. Let the walls hold the load. Trust the process. Trust the process you built with sovereign intelligence. Trust the blueprint you drew with your own hands. Trust the architect you've been becoming through 250 consecutive episodes of disciplined construction done in public, accountable to the community without apology for the ambition and what the build represents, right? Now, as we come to a close, man, right? Let's talk about what episode 250 actually means, right? Let's talk about what it actually means, right? Y'all wonder why I'm looking over in this direction. So I have several cameras set up, and I'm gonna address this. Over here, I'm looking at myself. Right? I'm constantly looking at myself on the StreamYard platform in its window, and I'm looking to make sure that I'm good. I'm always looking over. People are like, why are you looking over? What are you reading? No, I'm not reading anything over here. I wish I could show you a picture of it. It's StreamYard platform, and it has all these buttons over here and all the options, and the applauses, the heartbeats, right? Like that. It's the explosion. All these buttons over here, man. It's what sets up the framework of the actual podcast. So I'm always looking at it, but there's a small screen over here that I'm looking at myself, man. I just make sure that I don't know. It's a habit. I've done it, right? So let's talk about what episode 250 actually means, right? Sorry about that. This segment is a declaration, and I want to be precise about the difference between a declaration and a celebration, because the distinction is at the intellectual spine of everything tonight was built on to communicate, and that needs to be communicated. A celebration looks backward at what has been accomplished and generates an emotional response to the completed achievement. A celebration is decorative. It is valuable in its proper place and its proper season, but it is not load-bearing in the structure of the build. A declaration looks forward and establishes what is true about the build and the builder in the present moment at the foundation for every decision and every action that follows. A declaration is load-bearing. It holds weight. It determines the shape of what gets built on top of it. So here is the declaration for episode number 250. Episode 250, stripped all the way down from milestone sentiment and performance energy and comfortable feelings that impressive numbers generate when you let them do the work instead of holding the harder position. Episode 250 means that consistency is verified and real and no longer a motivational concept or an aspirational identity. 250 consecutive weeks of showing up on a schedule and producing content and delivering intellectual depth and spiritual challenge and strategic substance to a community that deserves nothing less than the full capacity of the builder leading the show, which is I, right? It's not possible in theory, or and it's not, I'm not alone in that, right? It is documented. It is demonstrated. It is a fact in the historical record of the ecosystem. That is not a feeling about what we have accomplished tonight. That is a data point about the actual load capacity of the structure. And 250 episodes, consecutive data points on a scheduled delivery tells me several things, right? It tells me something specific and actionable about what this structure can hold going forward that did not know the same certainty at episode 100, episode 150, or even episode 200, right? The structure can hold considerably more load than what has been placed on it so far in the construction history. The capacity is demonstrably larger than the current output. That is not self-criticism about what has been built. That is construction directive about what the structure was designed to become and has not yet fully become. We build bigger, and the foundation has proven it can hold exactly what's coming. Because episode 250 means that the original version was not too large for the builder carrying it. One of the most psychologically damaging early construction experiences every sovereign builder faces is the moment when the gap between when you are standing and where you have publicly declared you are going feels so enormous that you intellectually and reasonably respond, and your response appears to be adjusting the vision downward to something achievable within your current capacity and resources. I didn't adjust the vision downward when the pressure arrived. The community, by its presence and its current and continued engagement, did not let the adjustment happen in the moments when it would have been the easier path. Episode 250 shows me, as this shows up, right? As we're 250 episodes later from zero, that the vision is not smaller than what it was when the project began. It is more specific, more detailed, more populated with actual documented research and visual controlled white paper content and doctoral framework architecture and published books with verified Amazon bestseller status. And with the built-in IP with copyright filings and trademark proceedings and brand architecture that did not exist in any form at the beginning of this project. That is the specific thing that happens when a sovereign builder makes the decision to build without stopping, regardless of what the milestone numbers say about when stopping would be reasonable. The vision does not shrink to match your current demonstrated capacity. Your capacity expands through consistent construction until it begins to match the vision you declared at the beginning, right? Episode 250 means the community is a structural element, not an audience. The smarts, the final boss, the motivators, the warriors, all four pillars present and engaged in the building and building their own structures alongside this one. That is one small thing that gets mentioned in the passing at the end of the declaration. That is a load-bearing component of the entire ecosystem. The build does not stand without community. It is built for and build with. We're on this journey together. Been saying that since day one. That is the truth behind episode 250 and what makes it impossible to avoid acknowledging honestly, right? Now, as we close, thank you. We're closing, right? I see you, Steve. Hang in there, buddy. Hang in there, Steve. Hey, Aubrey, don't you go nowhere, bro. Don't you go nowhere. Eric, I said, hey, Eric, stay there. Listen. Diane, look, all of you guys, I need Jacon, Andrew, all you guys, right? Timothy, Merc 544. Look, stay there. I need you to stay there because we're closing, right? Let's close with the fired up train, right? Let's see what we got over here. I got a train whistle. All right, we're about to close. Drum roll, please. Oh, right. Listen, architecture, fired up train. Architecture does not celebrate, but the architect can acknowledge what has been built and what the building represents and what it is still in the process of becoming. And I'm acknowledging that tonight with full clarity and without performance that something genuinely real has been constructed here across the span of 250 episodes and 4 seasons of the Final Boss podcast. Not just as a show that airs on a reliable schedule, a community with 4 distinct and active pillars that know who they are and why they are, right? A body of work that includes podcast episodes and published books and living white papers and original IP across multiple domains that did not exist before this project can create before the project created it, right? A doctoral, listen, man, tomato, potato, right? People say, listen, right? It happens. Framework, right? For consciousness sovereignty architecture that is preparing to enter formal academic evaluation. A legacy architecture that extends through Go Time and Go Time 2 and Go Time 3 and Final Boss Origins and Clefro Site Diginet, the merge year 1, and the doctoral catalog that pairs them into the coherent intellectual and commercial ecosystem that I'm building, right? A sovereign identity structure with 3 layers, right? With 3 layers. As Turbo the CEO, as the operator layer, the doctor as the doctoral research layer, the sovereign as the legacy umbrella that holds everything together. That is not a small thing to have that has been built over 250 episodes of consistent public construction. That is an entire ecosystem that started with a microphone and a commitment and became something that I could have not fully described at the beginning because it was not fully imaginable from where I am standing when the first episode emerged, right? Now, let's get back on the fired up train, right? Because the fired up train keeps becoming. It keeps becoming, it's still becoming, because the build did not stop when the numbers got impressive or when the arcs got difficult or when the personal circumstances of the builder demanded the kind of choices that did not have comfortable options available, right? To my smarts, who brought analytical precision and systems intelligence to every merger Wednesdays and every sitting down Sunday, where we went into the deep technical and scientific architecture of what consciousness and technology are building toward each other on this very frontier. You are load bearing in this structure. That's right. You built this with me, right? To the fighter bosses who are constructing their own legacy architectures in parallel with this one, who show up to the community with this specific kind of sovereign charge that this show delivers, and then go back out into their own and build and apply it to something the world genuinely needs them to complete, right? You are load bearing in this structure, right? You built this with me. And to my motivators who kept other people in forward motion in their immediate circles, even on the days when they personally needed someone to apply that same forward force to their own momentum and could not always find it within what they needed to produce in themselves and when they needed it most. You are load bearing in this structure. You built this with me. And to my warriors who held positions that nobody else in the sphere was willing to hold, who understand at the identity level that mission comes before comfort and that the legacy is built in the moments when nobody is watching and nothing external is rewarding the continued effort. You, my friends, you are load bearing in this structure. You built this with me. All 4 pillars, every single episode across every single season, load bearing every one of you in a structure that holds stronger tonight than it has ever held at any previous point in construction history, right? We are 50 episodes away from season 5, The Harvest. The construction is active and ongoing. The arc is not complete. The structure is still becoming what it's designed to be from the very first decision that was made about what this project was going to mean and what and who it was going to serve and how long it was going to run and how deep it was going to go before it called itself finished. And the next Sunday, We will be back in the seat at this time with the same commitment to the quality of the conversation and the depth of the work and the honesty that this community has earned and deserves from the builder leading the show. Because that is what builders do. They show up, they work, they build past the milestone and past the applause and past the version of themselves that would have accepted 250 as a reasonable stopping point and called the structure complete enough to rest on, right? Look, architecture does not celebrate, it just holds. The structure is holding stronger than it's ever held before. I will see you again tomorrow for Motivation Mondays, right? Then Tech Tuesdays with Sensei. The Emerger Wednesdays for Consciousness Sovereignty Architecture conversation about humankind and AI kind convergence. This is the Final Boss Podcast. Oh, and then special guest Thursdays. And then we do it all over again for sitting down, right? This is the Final Boss Podcast, Season 4, Arc 4, Episode 250. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for hanging in there. I see all of you guys, and I appreciate you. And look, make sure you show up tomorrow. Show up tomorrow for Motivation Monday, right? Show up tomorrow for Motivation Monday. As we close out, always remember, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but there's an even heavier pain that comes with regret. I am here. We are here. And if I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That is our show, ladies and gentlemen. That is our show. Thank you for joining us. Be balanced, be equal, and be smart. Take care. See you tomorrow. Same time, same channel, right? I love that.
Table like it's on me. Put it on my tab, kid. However you get there, foot it, cab it, iron horse it. You leave it on your face, forfeit. Across the mic, hold it like the heat. He might toss it. Told her, tell him they stole it. He told her he lost it. She told him get off it and a bunch of other more shit. Getting money, DTs be getting no new leads.